My friends, I'm joined by the one and only, the amazing, the incredible Charles Bear too.
Hello.
And I think you take practicing your instrument also quite seriously.
Yeah, I'd say pretty seriously. I practice maybe hour and a half per day.
Nice. If I have the honor of having you here today, maybe we could go through 10 things players of all kinds, so not just bass players, not just guitar players, musicians in general should focus on in their practice routines. What would be your number one thing?
Well, I think the most important thing is to have goals for your practice session. You need to know what you want to improve on. For example, maybe I'm trying to think of a guitar technique. Well, for bassists, it's often, like slap bass. For guitarists, it might be sweep picking. Yeah. I find that having like 3 or 4 kind of objectives for each practice session is ideal. In general, just like knowing going into the practice session what you want to improve on is much better than just deciding like, okay, I need to practice for an hour. Let's just play some things for an hour and see what happens.
Nice, yeah. I think that's how most people approach it. This is also one thing that I figured out, like maybe a second tip. I tend to place some super fun stuff for me at the end of practice routines sometimes, because I feel like when you end with something that's extremely hard for you to do and that you're not happy with, you might end the practice routine feeling like, oh, this kind of sucked.
Right.
This wasn't fun. But if you have something like you're working on a song, maybe, or if improvisation is really fun, doing something more practical, and you come out of the session like, wow, okay, this was fun. I actually want to do that again tomorrow.
Yeah.
And the third thing is also something you already mentioned. It's the time of practice. You mentioned going for 1.5 hours.
Yeah.
Is something healthy you can keep up for a long time.
Yeah. In general, it's like averaging about an hour and a half. And I think that's a really good amount to be like, you're going to get a lot of improvement that way, but it's also not going to just completely burn you out and make you hate the process.
I feel like that's the number one mistake I see from people sometimes signing up and joining the personal coaching tier, for example, posting in the Facebook group like a practice plan that's 4 hours or something. And I would love to see that. People sticking to that. There's nothing wrong with practicing for 4 hours if you love it and you keep that up for years.
Definitely.
But most of them just do it for a week and then they're like, oh, I can't do this anymore. I mean, the fourth thing is also something, at least that I always think about. It often sounds cryptic to just say practice for that amount of time, but what exercises should you actually focus on? Like, is there something you're working on right now, for example, in your routine?
I've practiced so much tapping that I'm kind of trying to get my slap to catch up. So I'm practicing quite a lot of like double thumb exercises, like
next position. Nice. Oh, that sounds great.
that kind of stuff, yeah.
The alternate picking of bass players.
It really is, yeah.
Nice.
Maybe I'm in like the guitar mindset right now. And then I'm trying to get like my double plucks going nicely. With slap, there's so many different like articulations you can do with your right and your left hand, and being able to coordinate those with exercises like
That's great. The one thing I learned right here is that all of these exercises sounded very musical. So, especially with the scale thing you didn't do. You were actually playing harmonic minor, I think. Yeah. So having practical exercises, I guess, is something that also helps. That you
Definitely.
The fifth thing I wanted to ask you about is something that I saw when you were practicing yesterday, right here, when we were working on something. You had a timer going. So I think you're practicing stuff at a specific amount of time and then you rest.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah. So my practice sessions, when they're an hour and a half, as they usually are, I have like 2 main like 45-minute chunks. But within each of those chunks, I practice in 5-minute bursts. So I have like a stopwatch that I set. And once it hits 5 minutes, I stop for like 15 seconds and then do the next 5-minute burst. And what I find that really helps me with is just to be really focused in these like short bursts.
And maybe a quick fire round of 5 questions that I can think of right now. The number one is, especially for guitar players, they always want to push their speed. How did you approach the topic of speed? Was it also that you felt like you had to play above your comfort zone? Or did you work with the classic metronome step-by-step approach?
Yeah, I mean, a bit of both, but yeah, essentially there comes a point where just incrementally increasing the metronome by 1 BPM per day or whatever doesn't really work anymore.
Nice.
It really is the kind of walking versus running analogy, where it's like, if you just practice walking a bit faster every day, you're never going to learn to run. So yeah, I kind of have the same experience.
It's great to hear that it's not like this just for guitar players.
Yeah.
Then the next thing concerns preparing for a tour, because we played a tour together recently. Is that different when you practice for a live set compared to when you're working on your technique? Is there any kind of difference in your approach?
Yes, definitely quite a big difference. Although I try to like integrate the two things. So as I'm practicing for a tour, I'm still playing all the scales and everything just to make sure my overall technique is good. But if I'm doing an hour and a half practice session, I might do 30 minutes of scales and then an hour mostly just running the set from start to finish, or isolating like the most difficult parts of the set and just running those over and over again until they feel comfortable.
The next quick one concerns the sound or setting when you're practicing. I have a lot of people playing only to backing tracks or to stuff they find on YouTube, and then finding it's a little bit hard once you have the metronome. They find themselves like speeding up or not playing perfectly in time because the guitar is a little bit kind of embedded in the sound of a whole backing track thing. Do you also recommend practicing to a metronome exclusively pretty much?
No, I don't think it should ever be exclusively just metronome or just backing track. I think having the ability to play along with any of these things is the ideal situation, because there will be times where you have to record to just a click, or you have to play with no click and just a band, like the good old days.
Almost done. The one question I also wanted to ask, you got to work with a lot of guitar players, I guess, and see guitar playing from a different perspective than most of us that are just so focused on playing this instrument, and you have a little bit of an outside view. Out of all the guitar players you worked with over the years, maybe studying at Berkeley, is there something you wish guitarists would work on more? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but timing seems to be an issue sometimes, because bass players have super steady timing because they're locking in with the rhythm section. Or is there anything else?
Yeah, I think timing is a big one, definitely. I think the other thing I would say is maybe not knowing where they should be playing like in a flashy way and where they should be playing in like a more accompanying way. Bassists, if anything, they default to just accompanying, obviously, because that's like the default role of a bassist. But I think sometimes guitarists, especially in like the earlier stages of their journey, they really want to be like the focus at all times, which, is understandable. Yeah, like right now. I think that's something that just comes with experience, and eventually you start to realize that serving the song is more important than just like getting a moment in the spotlight.
Nice, yeah, we should all work on that. The one thing you do on bass that inspires me the most, and this is going to be the most, I guess, inside joke of all time. I don't know how many of you awesome people played Legend of Zelda. You can make a Goron sound with your bass. Could you demonstrate this amazing technique?
Yeah, of course, yeah. I spent years practicing this.
That's my favorite technique of yours. But maybe something a little bit wholesome at the end. This is the first time we have a bass player here on this channel. I assume everyone that's watching is a guitar player. What's the number one thing that people can learn from bass players that's maybe kind of an exclusive thing?
If you're interested in playing slap guitar, that's something that bassists are generally...
I'm not too great at that. Yeah, I could definitely work on that a bit. We talked a lot about how to practice and what to avoid and what to do in your practice routines. But now it's time to actually get to work. I just published some brand new exercises on Patreon. You can go there by clicking the link down below. That's my online academy. Those exercises are pretty musical and they basically cover everything we discussed in this video. And as you will see on my Patreon page, I also recommended Charles over there. So in case you want to go a little bit deeper into bass, that's obviously the #1 choice. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Goodbye.
Wow.